We have an interesting trade review today coming from the Atlanta Hawks Sports Illustrated team, specifically Jackson Caudell and Rohan Rahman, circling around the potential of the Utah Jazz to actually make a trade to get the one and only Brandon Ingram. And obviously, there are some other pieces at play, and this is a three-team trade, including the Atlanta Hawks, the Utah Jazz, and the New Orleans Pelicans. So things are interesting to say the least, but we're going to go ahead and jump into those one. If you're new to the channel, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications if you're into NBA basketball. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and break this one down. So in this trade, they suggest that Atlanta receives Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, the 2027 first-round pick via Cleveland. Utah receives Brandon Ingram, Clint Capella, Kobe Bufkin, Cody Zeller, and a 2025 first-round pick from Atlanta via Sacramento, protected pick from 1 through 12. New Orleans would receive John Collins, Walker Kessler, Garrison Matthews, and a 2028 first-round pick via Cleveland. That's a lot. That's a mouthful, and there's a lot to break down there, but the easiest thing to do is to just go team by team. Now, as a Utah Jazz cover specifically, I don't think that I love this trade, particularly coming before this season starts or during this season, because you want to tank this year in order to get one of the allegedly franchise cornerstone tier pieces that will be available in the top 5 to top 7-ish picks of this specific draft. Now, could those fall through and one of those or two of those players not be like that? Of course. But then again, do you think that Brandon Ingram is going to be worth more than one of them? At the very least, enough to get rid of Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton and Walker Kessler and John Collins. So you're going to be a very, 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 very young team from a standpoint of players that are actually going to matter. Obviously, you have Svi Mykhailiuk as well as one Patty Mills, and there's a couple other aging pieces that are there just for leadership alongside Larry Market and then the 7 or 8 guys that are under 20. But I don't necessarily know if I love this. If you're an Atlanta Hawks fan, this does make a decent bit of sense, I would say, because for one, it ends up allowing you to offload Clint Capella's contract, which means that Onyeka Okongwu is going to be able to step into a starting role at center, and I believe that's going to be doing wonders for their team, honestly, because Onyeka has just a higher ceiling, straight up, point blank, period. I think that adding that 2027 first round pick will also give them some more draft ammunition to make some more moves later on. Obviously, Clarkson and Sexton from a scoring standpoint. Clarkson is coming off of a down year, but I don't think that that's an indicator of him just being absolutely terrible going forward. I think that in a new situation, he could revitalize some better shooting. And Sexton, over the last 51 games of the season, actually had some historic numbers that have only been averaged across an entire season by 5 players. I believe that Sexton would be the beneficiary going to Atlanta to play alongside Trae Young, despite the fact that having a small backcourt would not be necessarily ideal, because while they can score defensively, no matter how hard Sexton tries, there's just going to be a lot of guys that he cannot guard. And since Trae Young is also a piss poor defender, it's not going to be looking good for them, not to mention Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench to also not help that situation. But the question would be also, are they willing to move on from their Kobe so quickly? He showed a lot of opportunities of, two-way potential, dare I say. And even though he was banged up, you can't sit there and ignore that, especially when you're trading and you're going to retain one Jordan Clarkson and one Colin Sexton, who offensively are significantly better, obviously, but defensively will never have the upside that Bufkin potentially could have. With that being said, though, moving on to the New Orleans side of things, you have them being able to move off of Brandon Ingram's contract without having to give up max money or anything like that. They end up getting a cheap center, still on a rookie contract, and Walker Kessler, who has the ability to fill their biggest position hole, which is at the 5. Now, offensively, there's some question marks with him, but defensively, we know it's all there. We know what he can bring to the table from a rim protection standpoint, and he does move his feet decently well on the perimeter, though he could be a little bit better. He's doesn't have two left feet like Rudy Gobert, basically, but he's still not, say, Derek Lively with his feet, which shoulder shrug. You would also end up getting a first-round pick in return, and then they could see how John Collins ends up fitting with the team, and if they don't like him, they can trade him. And then you also have Garrison Matthews, who will provide some quality shooting on a very cheap deal. So those are all really big positives if I'm a New Orleans fan. And on the other side of things, you ask, is it going to be enough for Brandon Ingram? I would say so, considering the fact that the market is so low on him. Nobody wants to pay him max money. He wants max money. His agents are sitting there vying for him vehemently, saying that he's worth it, and he's quite honestly not. So you don't have to worry about paying him. You don't have to worry about going over the luxury tax or anything like that. There's no aprons that you have to concern yourself with. You end up getting a lot of cheap talent that is also going to be effective talent and can stand the test of time for many years to come. The only question would be, is Kessler going to be ready to start at center for New Orleans? But aside from that, is John Collins going to be tradable if he doesn't work out and you don't like the fit that he has with your team? Just questions. I don't necessarily have answers for those questions, but they're just questions. Now, obviously, onto the main squad, you have the Utah Jazz. And they obviously, the winner of it being the fact that they get the best player that is going to be in the deal, but they have to decide if he's going to be a good fit alongside Lauri Markkanen and if he's worthy of an extension. Because the worst thing that could happen is you take on his contract, you look at him, and you either A, don't think he's a good fit and have to try and find a trade opportunity or do a sign and trade, or B, you think he's a good fit, give him max money, and then he's not a good fit. That would be absolutely the most atrocious thing humanly possible. That said, the pairing between the two of them has to work. Now, Boofton also is a promising young guard, and Capella gives them veterans as an option at center, even though you end up dropping off, John Collins alongside Walker Kessler. You move Kyle Filipowski up in the rotation, which gives him some quality minutes, so I guess that's a positive as well. And then you also have Taylor Hendricks playing a lot of minutes on the floor alongside Lowry. But that really is it. Maybe you could argue the fact that the additional bit of draft compensation could potentially help them, as well as their ability to stay underneath the luxury tax as a result of the deal. When it comes to them not deciding to do the deal, you're still going to want to tank this year, as I said before. So does this move you into a position to where you're going to be too good to be terrible, but also not good enough to be a playoff team? Because that would just be not fun, to be quite frank with you. Now, obviously, Brandon Ingram is coming up on a big extension. His numbers aren't bad this year. I think things will be very interesting to see if he doesn't get traded, if he does get traded, if he ends up putting up really, really good numbers to justify his desire to get a max contract, or if he ends up playing under the standard again and people say this is exactly why we're not giving you a max contract, because that could also happen. But aside from that, it makes you wonder if the assets that you're giving up are going to be worth it. I'm a lot higher on Colin Sexton, I guess, than most people are. I believe that he could be an ideal point guard, aside of his lack of overall defensive size. The energy's there, the vibe is there, the communication is there. Offensively, as a playmaker, he made strides over those last 50 games of the season, which is literally over half of the season, over, dare I say, probably 2/3 of the season. He was making drastic improvements on that side of the offense. He was also an extremely good shooter, shooting almost 50% from the field and 40% from three-point range. So if he can continue that momentum into this year and play a significant number of games going forward, I believe that he's going to be an ideal person to run your point guard spot, because there's very few point guards in the league that can put up those offensive numbers. Defensively, obviously, has the issue, but people don't have these conversations about Trae Young, whose inefficiency has needed to be a topic of conversation for a very long time now. But I digress, because obviously you've been trying to unload the contracts of probably John Collins and Jordan Clarkson for a little bit, and there hasn't been very much of a market for either one of them. Walker Kessler has had some question marks, but he's still young. Do you think you're giving up on him too early? Should you give him a couple more years and then see how he's doing at the end of his rookie contract before you end up cutting ties or trying to trade him? There's a lot of questions to be asked, but that's all I had to say. I just wanted to bring it to the table, see what you guys' thoughts were on it, whether you're a fan of the Utah Jazz, the Atlanta Hawks, or of the New Orleans Pelicans? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, I'm interested to hear what you have to say. It's been your boy Wraith Hoops. Thank you for tuning in this video. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, become a member of the channel, or drop a donation to help support the content. And as always, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're in the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.